Hi guys, we're on our third night of reading The Wizards of Once by Cressida Cowell. We're going to find out tonight what Zar's plan is to trap a witch. A witch? The bear, the snowcats and the wolves went very still and began to shake. Even Ariel, the wildest and most unafraid of Zar's sprites, shot up into the air and momentarily disappeared. "There are witches in this part of the Badwoods now, I know it," whispered Zar excitedly, as if a witch were a delightful sort of present that he was offering everyone. There was a long silence, and then Luther and his wizard followers began to laugh. They laughed and they laughed and they laughed. "Oh, come on, Zar," Luther said at last, once he'd got his breath back. "Even you must know that witches have been extinct for centuries." "Ah, yes," said Zar. "But what if some of them survived and have been hiding all this time? Look, here's what I found in this very clearing, only yesterday." Out of his rucksack he carefully took an absolutely gigantic black feather. It was huge, like the feather of a crow, but much, much larger. A soft black, fading at the end to a glowing dark, shiny green, the colour of a mallard's head. "It's a witch feather," whispered Zar. Luther smiled his most superior smile. "That's just the feather of some big old bird," scoffed Luther. "Some giant crow. You get some weird things living in the Badwoods." Zar frowned and hung the feather from his belt. "I've never seen a bird as big as this one must be," said Zar grumpily. "It's all nonsense," smiled Luther. "Only a brainless fool like you wouldn't know that. Witches were destroyed forever." Caliburn flapped downward and landed on King Cat's head. "Forever is a long word," said the raven. "You see," said Zar triumphantly, "Caliburn is a bird of omen who can see into the future and into the past, and he doesn't think that witches are gone forever. All I know is, if witches were not to be extinct for some reason, you wouldn't want to go meeting one in a dark place," said Caliburn, shivering. "What do you want a witch for, Zar?" "I'm going to catch the witch," said Zar, "and remove its magic and use it for myself." There was another horrified silence. Eventually, Luther spoke. "That, little brother, is the worst plan I have ever heard in the whole history of plan making." "You're just jealous you didn't think of it," said Zar. "I have a few questions," said Luther. "How are you going to catch the witch in the first place?" "That's what the net's for," said Zar, taking a net out of his rucksack and holding it up. You couldn't fault his enthusiasm, at least. "One of us will volunteer to be wounded ever so slightly, and then the blood will attract the witch." "Oh, great," smiled Luther. "Now you're going to wound one of your sad little followers in a forest stuffed with raving werewolves and blood-sniffing ogre breaths? Come on, you're completely crazy. This plan is as pathetic as you are." Zar ignored him. "And then I'll entangle the witch in this net when it attacks. Next question?" "Okay, question 2, said Luther. "No living wizard has ever seen a witch, so how do you know what one looks like?" Zar opened his rucksack and took out a book the size of a large atlas, entitled The Spelling Book. Every wizard is equipped with a spelling book, given to them at birth. Zar's was looking extremely worse for wear. One part of it was invisible. It accidentally got dropped in invisibility potion. Another bit was burned so black you could barely read it. This happened when Zar set the wizard camp on fire, and many of the pages were loose and dropping out all over the place. Too many adventures to go into here. Zar opened the book to the contents page, which had the 26 letters of the alphabet written on it in very large gold script. Zar spelled out witches by tapping on each letter in turn, and the book turned its own pages, which seemed to go on forever and ever and ever, the chapters in front turning invisible as the book rifled through the rest of them like an endless pack of cards, until eventually they stopped at the right place. That's weird. It doesn't say what they look like, but they're green, I think, said Tsar. Someone else thought witches could turn invisible, and they had acid blood. Another that they squirted that blood through their eyes. I'm sure we'll recognise one when we see it, said Tsar, impatiently shutting the spelling book. They're supposed to be pretty horrible, aren't they? Awesomely horrible, said Caliburn gravely. The most terrifying creatures that ever walked this earth. So even if you do catch this witch, how will you persuade it to part with its magic? Asked Luther. I'm imagining that invisible green acid blood squirting witches that are the most terrifying creatures that ever walked this earth will not give up their magic if you ask them pretty please. Aha, said Tsar craftily. I've thought of that. With a grand flourish, he put on some gloves, reached into his rucksack and took out a small saucepan. Silence again. You do realise that's a saucepan, said Luther. This is no ordinary saucepan, said Tsar cunningly. And then he took a deep breath before he made his shocking announcement. This particular saucepan is made out of iron. Most of the wizards took a horrified step backwards. The sprites let out shrieks of alarm. Luther alone refused to be impressed. In fact, he laughed so hard, Tsar thought he might fall over. This is too good. You're going to fight a witch with a saucepan? Sneered Luther. You're no great leader. Tsar, you're a liar and a loser. Our father is ashamed of you, and now I know why you're so keen to steal magic from a witch. There's a spelling competition at the winter celebration tonight, and you can't do magic. Tsar can't do magic, taunted Luther. Tsar turned red with embarrassment, then white with anger. The fact he couldn't do magic yet was one of those hidden sores that you didn't want anyone else to see. Wizard children were not born magic. Their magic came in when they were about 12. Tsar was 13, and his magic still had not come in. Tsar had tried doing magic. For countless hours he had tried, really simple things, like moving stuff with his mind. But it was as if it were a muscle he didn't really have. Relax, everyone said. Relax and it will happen. But it was like trying to move something with arms that weren't there. And recently he had been beginning to worry. What if it never happened? It was an unlikely calamity, but what a disgrace to the whole family it would be if a child had been born to the king enchanter who had no magic. The thought of it made him feel a little sick. Poor little baby Tsar, crooned Luther cruelly. Think he's such a big boy, but he can't do any magic whatsoever. My magic will come in, hissed Tsar. But in the meantime, I swear, he spat, eyes so small with anger that he could barely see out of them. I swear I'm going to catch a witch, and I will squeeze so much magic out of that witch, Luther, that I will blast you out of existence. Oh yeah, grinned Luther. He reached into his rucksack and took out one of his staffs. A wizard's staff was about the size of a walking stick, and wizards concentrated magic through them. Your spelling won't work on me when I'm carrying iron, roared Tsar, rushing forward to hit Luther with the saucepan. Which was perfectly true, but most unfortunately, in his charge forward, Tsar tripped over a long tangle of bramble, and his gloved hands lost their grip on the saucepan, and it went sailing over Luther's head and into the undergrowth. Luther pointed his staff at Tsar and whispered the word of a spell under his breath. Luther's body trembled as the magic quivered through him and channeled out of his hand into the staff, which concentrated it into one quick, fierce, hot bolt of magic that blasted out of the end of the staff, hitting Tsar on the legs. Tsar stopped mid-charge, his feet stuck to the ground by Luther's spell. Ha 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 ha, laughed Luther's followers. Remove the spell, shouted Tsar, struggling to shift his feet. but it was as if they had turned to lead. So, Tsar, the great leader, is now stuck to the floor by Luther's spell. How will he escape? Will he ever catch a witch? Join me tomorrow to see if Tsar gets out of this tricky situation. Bye!